G'day, Dave here, December the 12th, and welcome to the last of 12 days looking at God's plan for Christmas in the Old Testament. We've looked at how God put a plan into place. You go right back to the very Garden of Eden. You see the promise through Abraham, through Isaac, through Jacob, through Moses, through King David, and now in the prophets, particularly the prophet Isaiah, pointing us forward to what God will do. And we're going to be looking at Isaiah 53. And if you've looked at this passage before, you might have seen that it seems to say more about Easter than it does about Christmas. But that's the thing. When Christmas comes, it comes with the purpose of Jesus walking through life till he gets to Easter. Jesus came to die, and to die upon a cross, and then to be raised again from the dead. Now, we know that everyone who's born is born to die. People these days expect probably to live for around 70 or 80 years, sometimes more. In fact, people being born today might well anticipate living into their 90s and maybe even 100. And so when people die very young, if a baby dies, or if a young person, a child, a teenager, a young adult dies, or if someone's cut down with cancer or a heart attack in their midlife, their 40s or their 50s, we kind of see that as awful. There's a tragedy at work here because there's an expectation that we'll live a long life, that will be fruitful in life, and then when our time comes, we'll depart. But the thing about Jesus is God's plan was very different. He came to die, not came to live and do all he could in life, and then death being the end, but death being part of the very purpose for which he came. In fact, death being part of his mission, because the death of Jesus was to be a sin-bearing death. That is, he would die with our rebellion against God placed on him, and so God punishes Jesus instead of us. You see, Christmas is pointing forward to Easter, to Good Friday, to Easter Sunday. It's helping us to get ready for the way that we can enter into God's kingdom. And I want to take you back to the prophet Isaiah. And we saw yesterday that there was a prediction about a child who would be born, and this child would be God. He would have the names of God. He would be setting up a kingdom for all eternity. And now in Isaiah 53, we hear about a servant who will serve the Lord by suffering and dying on behalf of the people. Let me read to you from Isaiah 53, verse 1. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. It's an extraordinary way to speak about God's chosen king coming into the world, isn't it? I mean, we would anticipate the coming of a royal, powerful Son of God to be full of majesty and glory and power. And what do we see? Well, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. In fact, he's such that people turn their faces away. He's unimpressive, he's despised, he's rejected, he suffers, he's familiar with pain, and people want nothing to do with him. It's a picture of what will happen to Jesus. Jesus will be whipped, he'll be beaten, he'll be flogged, he'll be nailed up on a piece of wood where he'll hang and die. Well, read on, there's a purpose in this. Verse 4, surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. See, Jesus comes to be rejected, killed. He comes to take upon himself all of our evil, all of our wickedness, all the things that we've done to hurt people, all of our rejection of God, all the good that we've ever failed to do, all the things for which we stand guilty before God, Jesus comes to take it all and to pay the price for that rebellion. See, Jesus is rejected and killed because that is the plan. It's a plan to bring salvation. It's a plan to deal with sin and suffering and death. It's a plan to welcome people into God's kingdom. It's a plan to establish a whole new realm where God rules, where there's no more pain or suffering or death. And that comes about on that very first Christmas, when God enters into our world through Jesus. You see, Christmas it's really just the lead up to Easter. God comes into our world in the form of a baby who grows to be a man, who is obedient always to God, and yet who's rejected by people and ends up dying on a cross under the judgment of God for you and for me. This Christmas, let's remember what a grand plan God has and what an expensive plan it was, that it would cost Jesus his life, because God would rather die for us than have us miss out on a relationship with him for all eternity.